Well, thank you, everyone who's here this evening to join us. I am Erin Baptiste. I am the Director for Special Education, and we are super uber excited for you all to join us for our very first, and then we'll have some subsequent. These are our parent in education, empowerment, resource, and support sessions. And today's session is going to be talking about transition services particularly. So just to give you all a little information, these peers sessions, what we'll refer to these sessions as peers from here, are designed to be informative. And they're a new initiative to support and educating our families and promote engagement and increase parental access to a lot of meaningful information and community resources for you all. Our DCSD parent educators, and specifically Ms. Lake right now, and some of our staff will be utilizing feedback from you all and collaborating with various departments to plan and host these very informative feedback sessions or sessions, just general information sessions. So we do appreciate you all being here to do this. Our department will also host a peers in-person event, which will be included in the upcoming transition fair, which is March 22nd. And the return of the spring parent engagement fair. So we have a lot of things on the forefront for you all, and we're really excited to get this stuff pushed out and to continue our positive collaboration and in support of our students in the district. We are wanting to introduce and recognize a number of people that have put a lot of work into supporting this endeavor for us, and that's Miss Lisa Lake, our parent liaison. Transition liaison, I'm sorry, we have Ms. Rolanda Johnson. She's one of our senior coordinators that supports dispute resolution, and a number of other things in our district. We have Dr. Danielle Howard Thomas. She's also a senior coordinator that supports transition services and special programming in the district. And we have a number of transition liaisons that should be present. And if not, we want to call them out anyway. We have Ms. Latanya Wilson, I apologize, Mr. Rodney Allen, and Mr. John Norwood. And I think we've heard from him already as well in support of getting this started. So again, thank you so much. And if you all have any questions or concerns, please drop them in the chat, and we'll be sure to address those as we are moving through our session this evening. And I think I'm supposed to be turning it over to Ms. Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Baptiste, for that warm welcome. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Rolanda Johnson, Senior Coordinator with the Department of Exceptional Education. Again, we are so excited to have you here this evening, and we would love to hear from everyone. In order to streamline communication during the presentation, if you all have any questions, please post your questions in the chat. At 7 o'clock, we will then select a few questions because we want to be mindful of the time. If we are not able to select your question due to time, please email your question to dcsdpeers@DeKalbSchoolsGA.org. I will post the email address in the chat for you all to reference. We will also have a survey that we would like for you all to complete at the conclusion of the presentation. So if you could just take a couple of moments to complete that survey at the end. Thank you all again for coming. We're so happy to have you, and I'm going to turn it over to Lisa.
All right. I know you guys are very ready to go ahead and get started with our very first session, which is on transition services. Extremely pleased to introduce our speaker tonight. She is the Executive Director, Ms. Cheryl Arno. She's the Executive Director for the Down Syndrome Association of Atlanta, and she is also working with the Georgia Inclusive Post-Secondary Education Consortium. Is that correct? Did I say that right?
Yes, and isn't that the worst? It's the worst name ever.
But we're excited to have her here, and without any additional time taken, I want to turn it over to Ms. Arno to get started with our presentation tonight.
Well, I am so happy to be here this evening. I feel like it's sort of full circle. 33 years ago, when I started in the field of developmental disabilities, I started working with DeKalb County. And so I remember those days when y'all used to have one of the biggest transition fairs and all of that. So I feel like I'm coming back around. I'm here tonight representing the Georgia Inclusive Post-Secondary Education Consortium. Is anybody else hearing that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, you're fine. We're going to monitor the chat so that we can mute those participants who may have forgotten to mute their Teams link. And Ms. Arnold, you're actually on mute. You're muted.
There we go. I don't know how that happened. Okay. So I'm so happy to be back in DeKalb County. It's where I've actually lived all of my life. So I'm so proud to be here. Tonight, I'm representing the Georgia Inclusive Post-Secondary Education Consortium, which is, we said it from the beginning, but we had to get all the words in there. I've actually been involved with post-secondary since the beginning. It was actually my baby when we first started. So I was a founder of the program at Kennesaw State, and the consortium has allowed me to stay involved, which has been just amazing, an amazing opportunity for me. I know that they're going to be monitoring questions and all that sort of stuff. I also don't like just lecturing. I'm also very happy if you need to sneak a question in there somewhere. But let's make sure at 7 o'clock that I'm going to be answering all your questions today. So the Georgia Inclusive Post-Secondary Consortium started about 10 years ago, and I don't need to go deep into history. What I want to do tonight is kind of help y'all with your transition planning, because I think that's what we're here to discuss. What I want to tell you, though, is I think that when Lisa said that she looked at kind of who was here, we evidently have parents of children in elementary school. And I just want to tell you, you're never too early to start this process. And we have families of children in high school, and you're not too late. So I want to make sure everybody feels really good about that. And middle school's middle school. It comes with its own issues, right? So I'm thrilled to have all different groups, and I've spoken to all different groups. Elementary schools are starting to call us. We knew when we started this 12 years ago that that was where we were going to have to start, because we have to start planning that far ahead. So when our kids are diagnosed, and of course in the Down syndrome community, we have a little jump on a lot of that. But generally, the last thing that anybody talks about is opportunities to go to school, to college. And now we have 10 opportunities in the state of Georgia, and we're pretty proud. We weren't the first, and we're certainly not the last, and we're literally growing by the year. So we are quite proud of that. So that's what we're sort of here to talk to y'all about today. What we're going to do is I'm going to go through this PowerPoint pretty quick about post-secondary specifically, and then I have a chart that I'll explain more later, and that will definitely help y'all through whatever transition you're going through. So Lisa, or whoever is advancing my slide. Okay, so what we want to talk about just very briefly is what it is, because people are still trying to figure that out. So it's specific. The most important thing that y'all have to understand, it is specifically for people with intellectual disabilities. This is not for somebody that's on the spectrum, that might have autism but have a higher IQ. This is specifically, these programs are specifically set for people with a 70 or below IQ. Okay, some programs are 4 years and some programs are 2 years. And you can see, I don't have to go through every line because I want to, in the best interest of time. But the goal is, again, whether you're living on campus or not, is just to start learning those independent skills, getting around campuses, and things like that. The principles of IPSC that we set forth when we started were that it needed to be an inclusive program. We weren't looking for any rooms in a corner of a college. We wanted them to be in school with their peers. It had to be academic based. It wasn't, and not that there's anything wrong, but to give you an example is Clemson Life, if y'all have heard of that, is not academic based. And it's just a different, I will never tell you what's right or wrong, but I will only ever tell you, what options you have. It has to be accommodating and be willing to make all the accommodations with your professors and all that. And now when we first started, it didn't make any sense, but it just made sense to me that individuals with intellectual disabilities wanted to continue their education. We started where it was more about having a college experience, but now It is all employment focused, and every school starts within the first year of having some type of independent work programs and some of that. And it has to be evaluated. So this has to be a real program on a real campus, not just to look nice. Okay. So the pivoting skills the pivotal skills that a lot of our students are learning is they're learning self-management. And of course that makes sense, right? Self-determination, which they may not have ever had in a high school. Motivation. And when we talk about motivation, so when people ask me kind of who goes to these programs and what skills do you need? Motivation is really the number one. And it's the number one because it can't be that your parents want you to go to college. You have to be, as an individual, you have to be determined to go to college. And that starts from the first day until they graduate, whether it's 2 years or 4 years. But the individual has to be motivated to want to go. And they have to they have to have the desire for social engagement. All the programs have mentors and can help them find their way on campus, but they have to be willing participants to want to do that. Okay. Next. So these are the schools, and actually, let's see, that's all the schools represented. So we started with Kennesaw State. We had that for 3 years, and then all the other schools kind of came behind it. We're really proud. Georgia State now, like, all I wanted was for people to have options, because I had options when I looked at college and y'all had options. And why should there only be one option in the state of Georgia? And now we've managed to have all different options. We also have a technical school that I always like to point out, Albany Tech. So we even have technical schools, but I wanted everybody to have what's going to be right for them. And we'll talk more about how to pick that later. But this is, to me, really exciting. Right now, we're pretty much done for a little bit. We haven't really heard from anybody else that's showing interest. But I feel really good about how Georgia is going right now. You have large and small schools. We wanted to make sure that we don't. Oh, actually, I'm almost forgetting. We just started at Berry College, so we actually even have a private school option now. So whether it's your child, or that's in elementary school, if your alma mater is UGA or Georgia Tech or Georgia State or whoever it is, all these schools are options for your kids. Okay, so I just wanted to go over this real quick. Think College is kind of our guru and our resource for kind of everything post-secondary. So I showed you kind of who's open in Georgia, but there's over 400 colleges in the country, and most of them take out-of-state students. And I would, just like you would do for any other child, I would strongly encourage you by going to Think College. They also have scholarship opportunities, but it's that way you can really get an idea of all the different schools that are available in the country. And then this lastly is my resource. The last slide. We'll skip questions because y'all are going to do that at 7. But you can see that actually that's Susanna's information. So I will put my information in the chat. I didn't check that when I changed this. But now we're going to go to the chart, which is really kind of the meat of what we're doing tonight. And we'll help you along the way. Hold on. Sorry, I can't type and think at the same time. Okay. That's how you can reach me. Okay, so now we're going to get to the meat, which is that chart, Lisa. See it? Here we go. Okay. I hope that y'all are going to be able to read this. Okay. So the reason that we did this strategies for success is, again, from elementary school to high school. These are all things that you can start working on now. It's a compilation. We went to all the colleges as part of Georgia State Center for Leadership and Disability. We went to all the colleges to say, what is it going to take? What does it take to get people ready for post-secondary? We didn't want to make assumptions. A lot of it's pretty simple, but we wanted to hear from them. And then what we realized was, once we did these strategies for success for inclusive post-secondary, is these are a lot of skills that can be used to go to work, to go through life. And it can start preparing your child to transition into adulthood. And so I know for a fact that parents have taken this form, this chart, to their transition IEPs. They're, it's just trying to think through, especially, of course, we had the college slant on it, but I think you'll see pretty quickly that any of this can be used as a work-related opportunity. So we'll start with the first column, and it's technology. And if y'all saw us earlier when I couldn't figure out where the camera and the mic were and all that kind of stuff, you'll see how important technology is. And that's it's only continuing to grow. In theory, it's making life easier. Sometimes it's harder, but everybody really needs to know some level. So the technology that we need in college is all the professors' text. And like I said, so through college, that's how your professors are reaching out to you. Is they're not calling everybody. They're going to email you or going to text you. I guess the first thing I need to point out is that most students, and there are some exceptions, but most students need to be able to read at least a third grade level. And that's the biggest requirement. And have an intellectual disability, that they need to be able to read. And so know that that's where we're going from. So technology is a big one on campus. It's how they relate to their peers. It's how they relate to their professors. And so that's something that teachers can do in terms of, setting up email addresses and emailing back and forth, so they get used to that. And that can start as young as y'all are willing to give them access to email. But certainly, emailing teachers or whatever is a sort of safe space. And so, but it's invaluable and all of my other adult clients, they email me their schedules. So even if they didn't go to college, they're working, but it's all, a lot of their schedules and everything are done through email. So it's a really good thing to have. Because the other issue is, the second one down, is you have to practice the safety rules. And when you rather practice the safety rules while you have a safety net, while they're still in school. And I think it's a really important, look, we all know that how tough it can be right now for social media and the internet. And I know it's really scary, but the greatest gift, again, and as soon as you feel comfortable, I would think that you would want to start seeing that on their IEPs. This next one, where you learn how to drop a pin, it just makes me laugh, because I actually just learned how to drop a pin because I got lost on a trip and my children had to find me. So please do that. Please help everybody figure that out. Before, I said I didn't know what it was, and now I actually know what it is. But those sorts of things. So when they get the call in the office on campus, they can help people get through their campus. And especially like for public transportation or anything like that. I also want to point out for colleges that the staff there is there basically 9 to 5. So the other big critical thing is that your child has to be able to function on a campus if they're living in the dorms, or function on a campus if they're not living in the dorms, but they need to go to the commons where they can eat or whatever, and to be able to navigate through a college campus independently. With some support, because the colleges will help you with some supports. But for the most part, they're gone from their offices from 5:00 at night till 8:00 the next morning, and they're not there on the weekends. The staff isn't there. Now, most schools have it set up with student mentors, but just start making sure that they know how to put a pin in case they get lost. And the other thing is that I certainly couldn't live without, but make sure that they're familiar with grammar, grammar check and all of that. They need help with their papers and they will be required to do papers. They are modified, but they'll be required to do it's pass fail. And I also want to make clear that at least the post-secondary programs, it's for a certificate, not a diploma. In case anybody asked that. So then we'll go back up to finance. So this is a really tough one. In the olden days, we used to say, oh my God, I still have checks left. How can I be out of money? Well, when you're just sliding cards, the concept of money becomes that much more difficult. So again, as early as you can, start working with your kids. Teaching them $1 and a quarter and a nickel may not be helpful these days because even a vending machine on a college campus or at work is all done by card now. So start thinking about strategies to around spending. The next one where you explore responsible use of money, get a preloadable. We've encouraged families to get preloadable debit cards and teach them how to, with a $50 limit or whatever, and start working at them. And again, this can be done in middle school. You know what your child's habits are, and it's not a bad thing to start learning. Other things that we've talked about, and they said that they start, one of the colleges actually does this, is when they first start, they absolutely, go shopping with them and show them kind of what it costs and how to budget, but letting them buy, again, in a safe space in your own home or, a field trip from school is letting them buy their own toiletries and figuring out, and helping them work out that budget. This is a big one. And, and normally if I could see your faces, normally this is when the parents kind of hang their heads and it's hard because we don't want our kids to fail. We don't want them to, maybe tumble a little, but they have to experience the consequences if they run out of money. They might be hungry for a meal because they ran out of money. But I don't know about y'all, but it's sort of how I learn sometimes. And understanding, and again, because y'all, if they're doing it at home or they're doing it at school, it's a safe environment. They're not going to get evicted. But they're gonna learn that they can't buy everything that they want. So do that in as safe an environment as you can, and let them experience consequences. The relationships line is my favorite, and it's one that we talk about the most because it's really the hardest, and it's very obscure and abstract, and it's hardest to describe. So it's very simple for all of us to say, you need to cultivate social experiences and encourage building relationship skills. It's hard, and we all get that it's hard. So finding what works for your child, you're going to know your child, whether it's elementary school or in high school, is help see what you can do about helping them to maybe join some of these groups or cultivate that. It might just be one friend, but doing what they can to cultivate those relationships, that's certainly going to help you in work and it's going to help you in school if you go to college. So that's a really important thing. Overnight camps. I'm sure y'all have all heard of Twin Lakes. We just actually started our first camp for the Down Syndrome Association. And so giving them those overnight camp experiences, I think is invaluable, and certainly preparing them, whether it's work or going to college. So I don't know about y'all, but everybody has to work on a little bit of conflict resolution, right? So it's sometimes we try to shield our children from that, and this is kind of heading right towards it, because they need to understand how to work out an issue. I mean, it's as simple as that, because that becomes really problematic if you're not working on that. It becomes really problematic, and again, either work or college. but to understand what compromise means. This is a hard world that our kids are living in right now. And so it's really important to figure out the best way that works for your children, or your students, to figure out how to be familiar with that. So everybody tells you to volunteer and all of that. Sometimes what we tell families to do is, if you volunteer as a family, um, that might be more helpful than, versus just sending your child off. But if you can, if that can be part of an IEP at any part of the process, then it's really important, because what it says to the colleges is that they have work experience. It's great to put on an application. And what is that? I mean, we'll talk more about time in a minute, but what does that say? That's the most important thing, is that your child can get up and go someplace and be accountable to somebody else. And so most of the colleges, I will tell you, all look for that area specifically, is what opportunities have they done to learn more about that. So this is one of my favorites, actually, is, and again, while they're in your home, while in a safe environment, is they've got to have the dignity of risk. They deserve it. You deserve it. But it's the change, and the ability for growth is all through dignity of risk. We can try to protect our kids. We can put them in a bubble. If y'all are, there's 89 people on the call. The dignity of risk, I wish that everybody would, copy that one block and put it up on the wall. Because if you give your kids a dignity of risk, it comes back for you. And do it while they feel safe in your environment. So that was probably one of the only squares that I got in, but I just think it's really important. Anyway, so time is, of course, a big deal, right? So no more, everybody makes fun of me. And Lisa, I think Lisa and I've had this discussion. I like a good paper calendar. I don't care what your calendar is. If it's on your phone, which is certainly where all the young folk are going, I don't care what your calendar is, but you got to have one, because we all have those busy lives. I don't know anybody that doesn't have those busy lives. So as y'all are, one thing that you can do is that make sure when your kids say that, y'all can meet once a week to discuss everybody's calendar, so your kids have an idea of kind of what you're doing. I was told early on in the field, that you don't just tell your kids you have meetings, tell them what you're meeting about. And so they can understand what meetings are. But make sure they're on a calendar. That's, if they miss a paper, or they miss an opportunity at work because they didn't have it on their calendar, that's not great. So do it, alarms clearly on your phones are the easiest way to go, or reminders on your phone. But if they need to manage school and work, then whatever it takes, however you take, and whatever works best for them. But that is a great transition plan, IEP, understanding, because it's, again, whatever they're doing in the future, um, you have to know when to get there and how to be on time, and that people don't tolerate you not being on time. So that's elementary school. And if it's high school, it's not too late. But who gets your kids up in the morning? I mean, I will tell you that we used to ask that, at KSU when I used to interview kids to go to college. Who gets your kids up? Well, if it's you, I know it's going to be hard, but again, so they won't be too late, but start making that, one of their tasks, is that they have to get themselves up and moving in the morning, or at least hear the alarm, or however you do it, but help them start. It's a great way to show independence, and it's really important to an employer and to college. So one of the things that we had issues with when we first started, these college programs, was working as a team. And I know that sounds kind of interesting, and it caught us off guard. One of the first things a lot of professors will say is, y'all are going to write a paper as a team or be a team or whatever. And what does that even mean? If they've never had a project before, that you have to get other people's opinions, then you have no idea what that means. So anything that y'all can do to help support that, and break down big projects into smaller projects. I really believe since COVID that this is one of the hardest things that a lot of these kids are facing and having issues with, is how to work as a team. I think everybody got quite used to working independently, but how to break things down so it's manageable. I think that that's a really good one. Um, this is, again, I think that this is very much an issue that a lot of college kids are having, and I think a lot of kids in general are having, is having coping strategies and discussing those coping strategies with your kids. It's an open conversation. We all need coping skills right now. I don't know about, well, can't say y'all all do. I can tell you that I do. We all need coping strategies, and you need to help them understand. Again, I don't know that this is an IEP thing, but understanding how important coping strategies are, I think, is really important. And I feel like I keep saying that. So please, I really believe it is. Um, but and helping your child to be able to articulate, even children that are nonverbal, you've got to figure out a way to cope, and get out your feelings and your thoughts. So that's a really key piece of helping your child through the transition period. Um, and it's something where I think we're all learning as traffic is getting worse and worse in Atlanta, is on a college campus or at work or whatever, is understanding and getting in the habit of travel time. That if a meeting starts at 6, that, pulling up at 6 is not the best thing, and giving yourself time to transition. And on a college campus, it's no different, but it's no different for work. In the last column, we'll talk about communication. Um, this is a really, and I'm not going to say it, this is a big deal for um, understanding how to work independently, because the whole idea, independent is a really, I think, tough word, because I think it gives us a notion that our kids, if they are independent, then they won't get any support. Well, I don't know about you, but I get lots of support. I have an admin person, and I have a director of engagement, and I have a husband who helps me kind of, helps me along in what to do. We all need support. So the idea of being independent um, is not a fair, not always the most fair goal there is. Having more independent skills and taking it that way, yes. But being independent and working independently um, is difficult. It's a hard concept to understand, but you have to know, one of the keys to working independently is knowing when you have to ask for help, and that it's okay to ask for help. And so anything that we can do to instill in our children that asking for help is a good thing, then I think that that will take them very far. So this one, I think, is probably one of the hardest things, and I'm actually seeing it more and more. Y'all are going to laugh at me, but hold on one second while I let my dog out so she won't keep barking. Sorry, she just woke up. Okay, I'm so sorry. So it's literally, we're going to be working in my community with a psychologist that's going to help a lot of our individuals, even children with Down syndrome, which sounds interesting just because certainly visually you would think that they are not all happy. They don't all want to hug, and a lot of them have big issues with their disability. And so we need to make sure that we are discussing it as early as possible, and helping them to cope. It's not an excuse, I think most people that know me would tell you that I never let it be an excuse. Um, but they need to be able to get along with their peers. It's really, especially as they transition to high school and even more so as they transition to adults. It's a really it's important for them to feel comfortable in their own skin, and they can't possibly feel comfortable in their own skin if they are not comfortable with their diagnosis. Their diagnosis does not have to define them by any means. I would never tell you that. That there are strengths and challenges and advocating for what the needs are. If you can't explain what your needs are because you won't explain what your disability is, um, then it's going to be even more difficult. It's going to be difficult to find peers, um, and you've got to give them a world in which they can live in. And the earlier, because I've had people as late as 30 years old that I've worked with, it's the best thing that you can do. And it doesn't, again, it's not an IEP thing, but the best thing that you can do for the individuals that you're serving or the being a parent of a child that has an intellectual disability is helping them understand their disability, but the strengths and challenges and all of that will serve them very well throughout their life. So the last couple, so is um, I've talked to a lot of teachers about this. So when we first started in the college arena, um, and all the colleges, just so you know, require um, an interview. And so if they've never gone to an interview in their life, whether it's again work or going to a college, if they've never gone to an interview in your life, you don't know what to expect. In the old days, at Kennesaw, it was the individual on one side, and there were 6 of us on the other side of this enormous table. Can you imagine? So after the first year, we were like, we have to get back to these schools. And I've worked and counseled a lot of kids to go to college. And one of the first things I tell you, and it's absolutely an IEP, it can absolutely be an IEP goal. But sitting across that table from anybody, whether it's one person or 6 people, is a really important skill to have. Um, and that's probably more of a high school thing. But it's so important because the first question that they're going to ask is, why do you want to go to college? And that was going back to what I said before, is they can't say in the interview, because my mom wants me to, that that's not going to go over well with any of the colleges. So prepare them. I mean, you can absolutely see the difference. All the people that I've worked with, you can see the difference from the beginning to the end. It's a great class thing. It's a great peer thing, so they can help their peers. But it also goes back to, you have to be able to openly discuss your disability in an interview process. But every job we've ever gotten, we've all gotten interviews. Every college, not every college requires interviews, but the post-secondary ones do, because they want to make sure that they're ready and prepared for school. So please, please start working on the interview process. And the last one is take tours of colleges. Every college has them. They're generally in the fall. A lot of the colleges here in Georgia have summer programs. So it might be just a week on their campus. UGA actually requires it. They have an overnight stay on campus, and that's all part of their interview process. So start preparing your kids. You can start looking as early as you want. The colleges might say they prefer high schoolers, but if there's a goal and a dream and you went to UGA, I'm a tech person, so it's really hard for me to say that. And you want your kid to go to UGA, then start dreaming it. It can happen. And find the right college for your child. You might have gone to UGA, but really Georgia Tech might have the better program for your child, or Kennesaw or Georgia State. So please be open to that as well. They all run very differently. But let's make sure that you're finding the right one for them. But start making sure that you're looking at those schools, just like um, typical programs in colleges and universities. For every time you walk on campus, they put a little check mark to make sure and to detect your interest in the schools. So I would strongly encourage you, and I would also strongly encourage you to look out of state if that's an option for you as well. In terms of getting funded or funding for these programs, the Georgia Council on Development Disabilities has worked really hard, and we're down at the Capitol every year. It's one of my favorite days of the year to go down to the Capitol and talk about post-secondary, meet with our legislators, because, quite often, a lot of the families that we deal with were told when they were born, thank goodness we're past you know, maybe an institution would be best. But now doctors can say, you want to go to college? You want to work? How exciting is that? And to have options for families is a pretty great thing. And so hopefully we're changing the story. We've only been around for 12 years, so it's moving a little, it might feel at a slow pace, but now we've got some significant money out of the legislature. We can help pay for it. We have Voc Rehab on board. And it can definitely be an opportunity for your kids. What else do I need to tell you? I can open it up for questions now if y'all have some.
Yes, Ms.
That's
Arnold, we do
permission.
have one question in the chat. She has a daughter who has aged out of the school system. Will she still be eligible for this program?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So in some of the programs, I don't know how old she is, but in some of the programs, living in the dorms, I think 25 is the limit. But if you're not living in the dorms, then there's no time. Columbus State, I mean, I don't know if you'd want to send your child down to Columbus State, but it's got a wonderful program, and they actually have quite a few non-traditional students. So again, looking at every school that's right for you.
Is the program also for a child with speech delay? And do they have to start applying immediately after high school?
No, you don't have to apply immediately after high school. Like I said, I'd say the average age I think is about 20, I think is what I've heard. So no. You know, and I would say that the colleges would support this. I'm a big believer in going to school until the day you don't, and till the day you turn 22, because that's the last of free. Truth be told, and these college programs are not inexpensive, and to get as many years out of the school system as you can. I've always been a big believer in. In terms of speech delay, as long as they have ways to communicate and can communicate with technology or whatever, then, like I said, the only requirement is that they have an intellectual disability.
Okay, so that probably covers this question that a parent asked. Does the eligibility area have to be ID on their IEP?
Has to be ID.
Okay.
And I will tell you, and I don't know if there's anybody from the school here. Kennesaw requires that your psychological is no more than 2 years old. All the others are at 3, but it has to be. So we have told parents to start, thinking about, when they're juniors and seniors, to get those so you can get your psychological paid for. But KSU is, and they've never really told me why they only they're requiring 2 years. Because I think through the school system, that's more difficult. But definitely be aware of that. But you have to have an eye, yeah. Because
Okay.
otherwise, there are ways to matriculate. There's ways to, if you can, there's some great programs in the state of Georgia that you can go that these other students wouldn't have the opportunity to do. We have about 100, and I think it's 140 right now that are going through post-secondary now.
Okay, Ms. Arnold, I have actually a statement of thanks. It says, "Thank you for this awesome presentation. 3 words come to mind from this presentation: autonomy, specific student-centered plan, adaptability, working on coping skills continually, active listening, communication effectively, and learning to ask for help. I will continue to aim and work on these goals with my students." And you got quite a few hearts on that statement of thanks. We do have another question. Do you have an example of a child with Down syndrome who went to college successful or
Yes, I
attended
do.
college successfully?
I do. You know that I'm pretty partial to that. I do. I'll tell you. So interestingly enough, um, it's and I really do, knowing the colleges like I do, I really believe it's part of its perception. So in the state of Georgia, there's 140 students. Probably 5 of them have Down syndrome, and interestingly enough, probably 4 of them are at Georgia State. Um, so I can't give you any real rhyme or reason. The past director at KSU used to call me and say, "Where are your where are your people?" I think it's a perception that Clemson Life um, offers more support, and they offer different supports for sure. But I think that's sort of, what's gone around in my community is that if it's a child with Down syndrome, then they should go to Clemson Life. I think Clemson Life is an unbelievable program. But I do believe that they're doing some really good things here in Georgia. We just had a student who you will probably see everywhere, and her name is Martha Haythorne. She just graduated from Georgia Tech, and is probably one of the biggest advocates in the state of Georgia right now. Um, and so I won't tell you there's a lot. I will tell you that schools are pretty open to seeing what they can do to help families feel more at ease. I, I, this the facts are that the most amount of students with Down syndrome are at Georgia State. I do believe that Spencer, frankly, has probably done a lot of recruiting as well. But if you have a child with Down syndrome, please call me. I would love to help. Um, and help make these decisions. So that actually goes for everybody. The 82 people that are on the call is I am very open and help. I would love to be helpful in this journey. That's part of my job. So I have my day job, but I still work for Georgia State Center for Leadership and Disability, and I'm a parent liaison. So my job is to help y'all figure out colleges and what that means. So I'm your local person. Um, to help get through this process, and we wanna help you through this process. It's, you know, I think it used to be the statistic was 700 people that were graduating every year. Does that sound right in the state? Whoever would know those great numbers. Um, it's we wanna make sure that college is an option, but we also understand that work is, also a really good option. And I think that any one of these strategies can be used for that as well.
Okay, we have a few more questions, Ms. Arno. I'm going to combine these questions because I think you'll be able to answer
Okay.
it together. The first question is, can there be a primary and a secondary eligibility for students to be considered? Meaning, if ID is the primary, can the student also have a secondary eligibility? And then the
Yes.
second question is,
Wait,
does this
secondary
could
meaning could they have
meaning
Down syndrome and autism? Or what are they saying? I don't understand.
I'm assuming perhaps maybe ID and speech, or maybe ID is primary and maybe let's just say emotional behavior disorder or other health
So
impairments is secondary. Maybe that's a better example.
so here's what I can tell you is that so like in the dorms, there's an RA in the dorms that's been specially trained or whatever. None of these schools, I can tell you that a disqualification would, yes, they have to have IDD, but none of the schools take people with behaviors. Um, and behaviors as defined by more of being a danger to themselves or others. Um, Emotionally, Um, Anxiety wise, your child has to be able to take their own medication. And so that sometimes rules some of that out. But if they are medicated or supported through, I wouldn't want to say that anxiety would rule anybody out,
Okay.
or emotional, but behaviors, anybody with behaviors, I can tell you that none of the colleges are going there.
Okay. The next
They just don't
question,
have
does
the
the
support.
I apologize, Ms. Arnold. This next question, does the psychological report have to be from a school, or do you all accept private reports as well?
They take private reports generally.
Okay.
They take
Point of clarification, they wanted to know, were you saying Clemson as in Clemson Life?
as in
Clemson Life?
Tigers. Mhm.
Okay, Clemson University
It's
Life. I
Clemson.
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, it's Clemson University, Clemson Life
Okay.
is the program.
Okay. Is the student's IQ a factor in being accepted?
Has to be a 70 or below. And I will tell, and so it's and if their IQ is I've asked it every way in which I can, it's a 70 or below. No 80s with an adaptive score.
Okay. And I'm going to wrap up. Miss Lake, please stop me. We have just a couple more, just really thank yous, Miss Arnold. Thank you, Miss Arnold. That was really helpful. My daughter is 23, by the way. Thank you so much for encouraging information. Where can I find information on how to help a child with Down syndrome? I did post Miss Arnold's email address in the chat again, cheryl.arnold@dsaatl.org. And then one final question, and Ms. Lake, let me know if we're good on time. Can you provide more information on the terms and the fees for the program?
So what I would tell you is you have two different ways to find that out, and because they change and I can't keep up with that. Is You can see it right here. But if you go to it's GAI. It's so GAIPSEC.org. It's GAPSEC. I'll put it right here. And they will get you to whatever college you're interested in. And that way you can kind of see what's happening in Georgia. I would encourage you, as Lisa and I have spoken, that I hope at some point that they will bring back the transition fairs. I don't know if this is the right thing to do or not. If you go, Gwinnett has a huge transition fair. So for your families, if they're looking, I think that they can go as well. But that way you can kind of hit all the schools. Most of the colleges, I can tell you, would be very happy to come out. And if you want to just even do a night specifically for the programs that are here, and not all the other resources, but that's where you're going to get. I would encourage everybody to go there, and you'll see about every college and all of their email addresses, and you can contact them directly and find out all their very specific fees. I mean, the good news is they are really working hard on money not being the factor in you not going to college. If your child wants to go to college and like I can tell you for the Down syndrome community, there's Ruby's Rainbow and there's some great scholarships available. But we hope that money won't be the deterrent. When we started, we never wanted it to be that. And with this money from the legislature, it's been very helpful.
Hey, Ms. Arnold, we don't have any more questions in the chat. Parents and teachers or whoever is on in terms of, advocates or, support care providers. If you have additional questions, please email your questions to dcsdpeers@DeKalbSchoolsGA.org. And if everyone could take a moment to please fill out the survey, the link has been provided. And Lisa, I'm going to turn it over to you.
If there's no more questions, I would like to just thank Miss Arno for coming and doing this presentation. It was a wonderful presentation. Lots of information that we received tonight.
Sorry.
No, it was fantastic. So thank you so much for taking your time to come out and share with our families. Post the link to the survey. There's also a if the information for Miss Arno is in there, as well as how to get in touch with her organization. So you should be able to find all of that in the chat. There is more sessions like this coming. So this was just the first. And so I'm extremely excited to be able to invite all of you to return and come back next month. We are having another transition session, but it is on guardianship. So if you have not already registered for that session, it is not too late. It is November 19th. We will have attorney Jay Aram here, DJ Jay Aram, and he is a special needs attorney. He's also a judge, and we're really excited to be able to have him come on the 19th. And so we would love for you all to join us. And these sessions, because they are recorded, the plan is for us to be able to have these sessions posted onto our district website on our exceptional education page. So we will not have those sessions posted tonight. So that recording may take, it might take us a little bit of time just to get it back up on the website, but that is where the plan is for us to be able to host these sessions, and you'll be able to find them there. I also just want to tell you, thank you to everybody who showed up tonight. Please tell your friends, your family members, your coworkers to join these sessions. They are free, and they're open to families that need it. This is why we're hosting these sessions, so we can educate and empower our parents. And so please share it. Yep, just relocated, Georgia. Thank you. There's a couple of thank yous in the chat for you, Miss Arno. There's lots of thank yous for you. And we just want to tell everyone also, all of our staff that joined today, thank you so much for being here. All of our DeKalb County School District staff is here and present as well. So thank you for your support. And we hope to see you all.
Can I say one thing?
Sure.
I am so proud. I can't believe this many people showed up on a Tuesday night. And so I think that that's a testament to y'all and the interest, and I'm so excited. And if there's anything that I can do to help, whichever hat that I'm wearing, I'm very happy to help y'all. So anyway, but thank you for including me, and I hope this was helpful.
Yes, thank you so much, Miss Arno. We appreciate it and hope to see you all next month.